where did God come from? Or is there anybody that has any theories on where has he just always been existing in a void, or what happened before he created it? Was there something else?
Good question. Where did God come from? That is going to be unanswerable from our perspective here on Earth.
What about the Sumerians book? The Sitchin's work with Genesis Revisited about where the Creator came from. You read the book?
Well, see, the reason they believed that is because they had not heard me speak. If they had been to my seminars, I would have said.
That's not the same means that the Bible has been generated from.
No, I disagree with that, but that's what's in back to how we got our Bible. Right. Give me your question one more time. Give me back on track. You want to know?
Yeah, where did God come from? And is there anybody that has any theory now? I mean, it's feasible.
There is no proof of that either way. But let me give you an analogy. I taught geometry, science, and mathematics for years. In geometry, in plane geometry, you deal with just flat substances. Let's suppose we have two people, Mr. Flat and Mrs. Flat. Okay? Here they are, Mr. Flat and Mrs. Flat. They live in Flatland, the chalkboard. They have no comprehension of the third dimension, right? All they see, actually, you and I, as three-dimensional beings, you can see two dimensions, width and height, and you understand depth, but you don't really see depth in the strict sense of the term. You could take a picture of what you're looking at, and it would be flat, but you would still perceive the depth in it. Third dimension is really something we perceive. You don't really see it, if I can get the difference across. Mr. Flat would see Mrs. Flat as a straight line. He could walk around and understand that she is indeed a rectangle, but he only sees her as a straight line. He walks around and says, oh, she's a rectangle, okay? Suppose I, as a three-dimensional being, would like to get them to understand me. You can't put a three-dimensional object into two dimensions. So I stick my finger through the chalkboard. Mr. Flat comes over and says, I've seen him, he's a circle. Right? The cross-section of my finger. Over here, I put three fingers through the chalkboard. Mrs. Flat comes over and she says, oh, no, honey, I've seen him. He's three circles. Both have a very, very limited, small view of what I am. Both are right and wrong at the same time. There's no possible way I'm going to explain a three-dimensional being to a two-dimensional being. Cannot be done. But yet I have the capacity of being closer to them than they can be to each other. And they're not even aware of my presence, because I'm just barely into the next dimension, right? I think God is not limited to our three dimensions that we have, length, width, and height, or maybe time, and maybe there's other dimensions. I think the God that I envision is beyond all of this nature. He created it. The guy who designed the car, or the computer, or the calculator is above and beyond and smarter than and outside of his creation. He's not affected by it. He has to be smarter than the watch. He made the watch, right? I think the Creator is not part of this creation in the pantheist sense. I mean, God, you don't go hug the trees because this God is the tree and God is the rock and God is the flower. That's a very limited pantheistic view of God. The God that I have is outside of his creation. If he wants to come down and walk on the water or raise the dead, he made the whole thing. He can do absolutely anything, totally unlimited. That is the Christian God, that he says, okay, poof, there's the world.
So in a scientific way, you're saying possibly could exist in a fourth dimension that we just can't perceive at all.
There's radio waves coming through this room right now.
Yeah.
You can't feel them or taste them or touch them, but you could, if you had an instrument to pick them up, you could pick them up, right? A radio. A lot of things we can't see that we know exist. I would say that, though that's a crude analogy, I know God exists because I talk with him. He's my buddy. I've been saved 25 years ago. I accepted Jesus Christ as my sacrifice. He paid for my sins. I am now going to heaven, not because I'm good, but because I've been forgiven. And anybody can have that. Jesus Christ came and died. God made this world. The people rejected God's authority, decided they wanted their own will. God says, no, I still want you. Some want him, some don't. Most don't. And God's the boss. He's going to take care of all that. His, judgment day will come, and God will straighten it all out. But until then, I've never seen him, but I'm going to serve him and worship him. I don't have to. I'm 41 years old. I can go do what I want.